Golden State Media Concepts bring you Book Review Podcast, a haven for bookworms of all ages and the widest genres, from mystery to memoirs, romance to comedy, fantasy to sci-fi. If you love to read, this is a podcast for you. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Book Review Podcast.
Hello, happy Friday, and welcome to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Sarah. I am feeling better, thankfully. Finally, starting to feel better. Still get out of breath pretty easily, but finally starting to feel more like a human. And I just hope your week's going well and that you have something good going on this weekend, because it is Friday, and I am still playing catch-up from being sick and from a variety of different things. I have interviews kind of backed up and rescheduled and all sorts of things, and my interview today is with author Mazey Eddings, and she was very kind and very patient with me as we had to reschedule because actually, during the time that I was supposed to be interviewing her, I was sitting in the parking lot at the hospital. I couldn't go in because I was positive for COVID, and my husband was in the hospital with COVID. He wasn't admitted, but he was in the ER with shortness of breath, so that was scary. And I had plenty of time, but, it's not exactly conducive to do an interview in the parking lot of a hospital in a car. And I sounded terrible. I didn't lose my voice, but I sounded terrible. Anyway, moving on. Mazey Eddings is my guest today, and I had so much fun with this interview. And this book is, it's romantic comedy. I love romantic comedy. I haven't had a chance to read much romantic comedy lately, so this was a wonderful little treat. The book is called A Brush with Love. Let me read you the description. Harper is anxiously and completely focused on becoming an oral surgeon when she crashes, literally, into Dan, a drop-dead gorgeous, heart-on-his-scrub-sleeves dental student. Dan's willing to play by Harper's rules and be just friends. But as the two get to know each other better, trading fillings for feelings may prove to be more challenging than either expected. 3-hour extractions and decaying teeth? No problem. Falling in love? Heart-wrenchingly painful. So it is romantic comedy. It has a great meet cute. When, as the book says, the back of the book says, Harper literally crashes into Dan. But it also has a mental health component. It talks about some of the struggles that some of the characters have with their mental health in the context of the book, in the context of this group of friends, and it's just presented in such a way that it gives great representation and really good insight into Harper has almost crippling anxiety, and you really get to see how that works for her, how her friends see it, how she hides it from her friends, etc. So it's really presented in a very real world, approachable, accessible way. And how it is dealt with as well, is dealt with in the same way. And I appreciated that aspect of it. But this is also hilarious. I laughed out loud. I literally laughed out loud many times. The first time I took my husband to the hospital, I was sitting outside again. This time I was just waiting for him outside in a waiting area, not in the car. But I kept having to stifle my laughter because I was getting weird looks as I was sitting outside the hospital laughing at the book that I was reading. But I appreciate that. So if you are a fan of the romantic comedy, you may want to check out this book. But first, let's go ahead and hear the interview so you can hear more about the book and the idea behind it from Mazey herself. Again, the author is Mazey Eddings. The book is A Brush with Love. Let's get to the interview. Hi, Mazey. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so thrilled to be here.
I am excited to have you here to talk about your book, A Brush with Love. Before we get started, I'm going to ask you to share a little bit about yourself. But before you do that, I'm going to be completely nosy and ask about your first name, Mazey, because it's actually a character from a book series that I really like. It's spelled differently, but it's one of my favorite names. So how did you end up with the name Mazey?
My parents just really liked it. They thought it was, I think that they just thought it was a cute name. It was a long time before I met anybody else with it. And then I think I felt very excited when Maisie Williams in A Game of Thrones, became really popular and stuff. And I'm like, oh, we share a name, and it's spelled differently, obviously. But there's no groundbreaking story behind it. But yeah, it is. It is it's not one that you hear that often from people sharing.
Yeah, and I think Maisie Williams is spelled Maisey, right? Or something.
Yes, something like that with an S for sure. Yeah.
So closer to the way that I see it in the book that I read. But okay, so now that I have just been completely nosy, if you could share a little bit about yourself, of things that you want to share, and not that I'm just asking about.
Yes, absolutely. So like you said, I'm Mazey Eddings, and I am an author. I'm a dentist, and I would say 90% of my time is spent on my most important job, being a stage mom to my cats, Yaya and Zadie, and just taking pictures of them. And I've always been, a huge lifelong romance reader. And writing in the genre has just been such an amazing journey. And I pinch myself every day that I get to do it. That's about it. Besides that, I'm a huge TV and movie person. I'm kind of boring otherwise.
I don't know. You don't sound very boring. I mean, you've got a career. You've got cats that are probably divas if you have to be a stage mom to them. I don't know.
Oh, the biggest divas. They just they just will plop down and start screaming until I give them attention. Nice. And so, it's a lot of emotional labor over here with them.
Good. Well, they're human and you have to cater to their every whim.
Of course.
Well, A Brush with Love is rom-com, which is great because I haven't been getting to read a lot of rom-com lately. So this was so much fun. Can you give an overview of the story?
Yes. So the story follows dental students Harper and Dan as they navigate trading fillings for feelings, and navigate the messy complexities of being in a really rigorous academic program, battling various mental health issues, and also kind of stepping into adulthood without being fully sure what that means or how you do any of this adulthood stuff. It's a slow burn rom-com with a cast of meddling friends and a giant cat. I was inspired by the being in dental school, and I had never seen a rom-com with a dental school setting. So I was there's just so many primed oral innuendos there and just right there for the taking. So I went for it,
This is true. Yes. You mentioned the cat and you mentioned your cats. So the cat in this story is a Maine Coon. So it's huge. Her name is Judy. Are your cats Maine Coons or are they normal size cats?
No, they are very normal. Actually, one is particularly tiny. The running joke is that she just gave up on growing because she stayed almost kitten size. I'm like Dan in the sense that I kind of have an initial fear of Maine Coons. And obviously I love all cats, but they're so big. It's I have just that initial reaction of oh my God, that's in somebody's house. And so I just thought it would be so funny to play on that and just have this big, huge fluff ball and everything. So I feel cats are really underrepresented in the romance genre. So I'm just here to incorporate them where I can.
Well, and I think you put the biggest cat in the smallest apartment, right?
Yes, pretty much.
Besides the obvious plethora of oral innuendo, what was your initial inspiration for the story?
So I started writing this book during my my second semester of dental school. So I was going through the program myself, and honestly, like, I was having a really bad mental health crisis at the time. I was really, really anxious. I was dealing with like some depression and stuff like that, just from the overwhelming workload. And then, all this kind of manifested in a lot of insomnia. And so I wasn't sleeping a ton either. But what I was doing during those hours from 11 p.m. until 4 a.m. was reading romance novels. And I was just like devouring them because the happy endings were such a balm for my own issues at the time. And, one thing that I wanted to see, and so this was early 2019, one thing I was kind of like hoping and wishing to see was a little bit more mental health representation and kind of looking at learning to love yourself while having a mental illness, opening yourself up to being loved by others while dealing with, grief or shame or all of these things that are very human emotions. And then as far as the dental school setting goes, obviously being in dental school, your world gets really, really small, right? So like 80 hours a week, I was at school, working or studying or doing something. And so my world kind of like, I was living, breathing, eating teeth not literally, obviously not literally, but, and so I had like put out this, I think it was Barnes & Noble was doing this, like, ask us for a book recommendation based on like a setting. And so I put one out for like a dental office or a dental school, and like they DM'd me back and they were like, we can't think of any that like fit this. We're so sorry. And so I was like, that could be like a really unique and kind of funny place to explore these people, like, again, just like on this path to loving themselves and loving each other.
Well, that seems like the perfect note on which to go to our first break. When we come back, we'll be talking more about dental school as a setting for a romance novel or a novel in general. So stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I'll be right back.
GSMC Beauty Tips Podcast gives you advice on everything from hair to fashion to skincare products. We'll talk about the latest trends in makeup, hairstyles, and anti-aging remedies. And we'll cover all of the newest fashion trends. If you have an interest in or questions about the beauty trends that might work best for you, the Golden State Media Concepts Beauty Tips Podcast has got you covered. Download the GSMC Beauty Tips Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast. I am speaking today with author Mazey Eddings about her book, A Brush with Love. She was just talking about the setting and the way the two main characters meet. So let's go ahead and return to that interview.
Actually, yeah, it's great because I don't know that I've ever read, I don't even know if I've read a main character who is a dentist.
Right before this came out, Sarah Hogel's You Deserve Each Other, the hero Nicholas is a dentist, and that was like the first I had seen that, and so I was like so excited when that came out. But yeah, other than that, I mean, it's not a very sexy profession in a lot of ways, so like I'm not surprised, but yeah.
Well, but still, I mean, there's a lot of professions that aren't sexy that still show up in romance novels.
That's true.
I appreciate that Dan is a first-year student, Harper is a fourth-year student, so you really get to see kind of the different levels. I don't know. I mean, I personally have not really thought, okay, what did my dentist go through to get to this point, right? I mean, and you have to have a 4-year degree first, correct? Am I correct in that? It's like med school, so you do a bachelor's degree and then the 4 years on top of that?
Yep, exactly, yep.
Yeah, so it's not for the faint of heart, I would imagine.
No. And I was feeling a little faint there for a bit. So
yeah.
Yeah.
can you talk a little bit more about Harper and Dan as the main characters? And what about both of them do you think is going to resonate with readers?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Dan is very much, a beta hero. He's kind of like golden retriever energy in a lot of ways. He is just like, he's a very soft guy. So he is like, I think in a lot of ways, he's a people pleaser. And that kind of manifests in his relationships with his family members and like kind of different aspects that he takes. And like, he reroutes his life and his career choices to please others. And so it's kind of, his personality was really interesting to write because it's like, there's kindness and gentleness, and then there's being very passive and doing what other people expect from you. And so I think that he plays with that, and like, or his character's arc kind of plays with that journey of like, where does like kindness and gentleness and just being like almost a pushover to what other people want and expect of you begin. And so he's very real, he's very flawed, but he's also extremely just loving and nurturing. And he, really just, he loves Harper just as she is, and kind of embraces a lot of the quirks about her personality. And then Harper, she's like my little fighter. So Harper has a panic disorder and a general anxiety disorder. And a lot of that is like triggered by school and like academic work and just like external validation and success, which I think is a huge burden that a lot of people face. And it's a very like easy thing for anxiety to manifest on because it kind of feels like it's in your control. And so she's definitely closed herself off to people. She's dealt with a lot of loss in her life. And so her method of coping is to throw herself into these like academic and career pursuits because it feels safer than letting people in. And, and she has like a lot of internalized ableism and shame about her anxiety, and so she's scared to share that with other people. And she makes a lot of mistakes. She lashes out and says things she doesn't mean, which I think is like very, very much something that we all do. And I think that she really learns to love herself. And I have such a soft spot for her as a character. I love all my characters, but like, I don't know. I just remember feeling like really proud of her and like, the path that she ended up taking to like work on herself and heal herself. And so, I hope that what readers like can connect with them is that, as humans, we have very messy feelings and very complicated ones. And that's okay. And you're lovable, in at your best and at your worst. Yeah.
Well, one thing I really appreciated was, as the reader, more, of course, than the characters know. And so there's part of you that wants to yell at all the characters. Why aren't you paying attention to your friend who's clearly struggling? Mm-hmm. But what I really appreciated was that the moment when, and I don't want to give too much away, of course, but there's a moment where Harper is talking to one of her friends who might be considered, kind of the least. She's not a med student like her friends are, but she just has this very calm, matter-of-fact conversation about mental health. And I really appreciated the way that you presented that in this, like, this is what happened to me. And, you don't have, you can talk about it, you can work on it, and it doesn't have to be this source. So I appreciated just that very organic way that you had that conversation evolve between those two.
Thank you. And yeah, you're talking about Lizzie, right? Her friend.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Her book comes out in September. I got to write her story.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, her book is called Lizzie Blake's Best Mistake. And so I'm really glad to hear that because I really, that was one of my favorite scenes. And that actually came at a much later draft too. But yeah, I felt I was like sobbing while writing that scene because it just felt very cathartic to, have that moment where somebody like leaves space for you to talk about your hurt without pushing you to do so.
And I think too, the character of two is more of the get a grip friend who
Yes.
you expect to kind of come in there with a heavy hand and sort of like not literally smack Harper,
Yeah.
but like, you know, figuratively smack her upside the head. And that's not how it happened. So it was a nice touch. Obviously you've been to dental school, so you know about this, the setting, but were there particular types of research that you did for the book?
You know, it's funny, like so many things coincided with what I was learning at the time. You know, so a lot of rereading passages back, especially like there's a heated scene between Dan and Harper in a study room where things get a little steamy as they're studying like musculature and stuff like that.
Never happened to me in college. I just want to throw that out there.
No, it never happened to me either. It was just me sobbing in the study room because I could not remember anything. Yeah, so that was just fully fantasy right there. But you know, like it was almost like an interesting way to like study in like a very weird and removed way, because like I wrote that scene when I was learning about musculature of the face and stuff. And I, you know, so I go back now and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, some of this I don't remember at all. But, you know, so a lot of my curriculum like supplied, you know, the dental aspects as they were happening, as I was learning them myself. And then, you know, I feel like the book takes place in Philadelphia. And I just love living in this city so much. And I've had so many incredible moments that, you know, it's one of my favorite places in the world. And so I think, you know, in a weird, like not direct sitting at your laptop researching sort of way, just like being in the city and having so many fun experiences was research in a lot of ways. Like Martin's Deli, like it's based on a real place, Koch's Deli, over in University City in Philly. And like, yeah, just so little elements like that really inspired the book in different settings and scenes and stuff. But yeah, I was kind of in my element with, you know, the dental school setting. So there wasn't so much unique research or outside research that I had to do.
Mm-hmm. How about character development then? Did you have pretty sketched out characters when you started writing, or did some of them develop as you were writing? How did that work for you?
I feel super lucky with this book and this group of friends, because like they kind of popped into my head one day and were so loud and voicey, and I can just I even now, like I can hear them so clearly and how they would respond in situations and stuff like that, that I, you know, when I started drafting, I had like a very clear sense of who they were. You know, and I think like, it was just like, it was such a joy to watch them unravel and stuff, because they were so loud in my head. But it still left the door open for them to surprise me at certain times. Like writing this book, I felt like a scribe. Like I was just along for the ride and they were telling me what happens. And so, they popped into my head pretty developed and stuff, which was just like a very fun, experience, and made writing it just like flow so much easier.
Time for our second break of the podcast. When we come back, more about the friend group and some of the secondary characters in the book. So stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast and my interview with Mazey Eddings. We are talking about A Brush with Love. Before the break, Mazey was speaking about some of the characters and writing those characters, how they just kind of popped fully formed into her brain, which is awesome. So let's go ahead now and return to that interview.
They're very, I mean, I can only imagine the fun you must have had writing some of the characters because they're very colorful.
Yes, the friend group in particular, like they are all so obnoxious and voicey in such different ways too. So I was like, it's just like they all had something to say about everything.
Yes, I can imagine. What do you hope readers might take away from the book? Obviously, it's a romance and it's got the happily ever after and it's lovely, but you do touch on deeper issues. Do you have a hope for what readers might take away?
Definitely. I think, to me, like the biggest thing and the reason that I wrote it in the first place was just to show that like mental health battles or, grief or any of these heavy things that we are so common that we experience as humans. Like they never make you unlovable. They don't make you any less worthy of love. And everybody deserves love exactly where they are. And again, in their brightest moments or their darkest spots, like everybody deserves love and a happy ending, no matter what that looks like. And so I just hope like the depiction of anxiety disorders resonates with people that have experienced it or, makes those maybe with loved ones who have anxiety, develop a little bit more understanding for what their loved one might experience and stuff like that. And so that's always been my biggest hope for the book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what draws you personally to writing in the romance genre?
Oh, I think it is so fun. I think that there's this huge misconception that like romance novels are formulaic. And what's funny is I don't get that sense reading or writing them. Kind of, like the one rule of the genre is that it has a happy ending and a central love story. But otherwise, there is, the way that people fall in love, there are thousands of a limitless number of unique ways that people fall in love and experience love. And it just feels like such a gift to get to explore that and to, see these different people and how they, the push and pull of these feelings and like past baggage that they have. And, this overlying idea that love does conquer all, or it at least gives you a safe space to return to while you're fighting whatever battles you might have. And yeah, I just love that. I think it's so fun. I think, the tropes that are kind of hallmarks of the genre are just a delight to play with and try to invert or upend. And yeah, I just think that there's just like so much you can do with the genre, and it's a happy one at the end of the day.
Yeah, sometimes I just want to read a book where I know everything's going to work out. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that, romance books get some flack for that because, mm-hmm. It's going to be a happy ending, but sometimes I personally just need that, especially when the world feels like, it's a dumpster fire.
Thank you.
I just want to know that something's going to work out, even if it's for fictional people.
Yes, we just need that one guarantee, like this right here, it's going to end happy. Everything else is a mess, but yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So are you working on, you mentioned Lizzie's books earlier, it's coming out in September. Are you working on something else right now?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I have actually a ton of stuff coming out soon. So yeah, Lizzie's book comes out in September, and then to finish out that like Brush with Love universe and stuff. The final book is another friend Indira's book. It's called The Plus One, and that comes out next April, and so April 4th, 2023. And so I'm just like finishing up like copy edits and final touches on the third book. And I'm super excited about that. And it's just been really fun to explore and keep like hanging out in this world with this group of friends. And then I also had the opportunity to write a YA coming of age romance story. And that book is called Tilly in Technicolor. And that's set to come out August 2023. And so, that was just a really cool departure from, adult romance and looking at teenagers. And I got to write. So I don't know. I don't think I've mentioned this yet, but I also have autism and ADHD. And so I got to write about an autistic hero and an ADHD heroine, and, them coming of age and like finding themselves and finding each other. And so that was a super fun book too. And so, that's another one that I'm putting some finishing touches on and everything. So I've been very busy.
You have been busy, yeah. And are you still having insomnia? I mean, do you sleep?
No, can you believe it? I don't. Well, actually, I do believe it because now I'm just like so tired. I just like fall asleep. No, I mean, one really good thing about, this whole journey is like, as I was writing about people that were dealing with mental health issues, I was kind of forced to look in the mirror and be like, hey, I need to get my act together. And like, now I'm in such a better place from where I started. And I don't know, it just feels really good to have like, had this like cathartic outlet for my emotions that also encouraged me to like, really get a better handle on my own mental health and stuff. And so I am officially sleeping and I'm feeling so much better.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
And just like I appreciate that you included the mental health aspects in A Brush with Love, I love that you have characters who are on the spectrum, and a YA book especially, because I feel like so often we see autism or people who are on the spectrum as, well, they have autism, but, and instead of they have autism and, right? Like, and so to have people of all kinds of abilities and lifestyles and just differences represented in books is so important.
Thank you. I love that. Yeah, no, you just hit the nail on the head. And it was like, it felt so empowering to write that because it's, I'm looking at an autistic teenager that, loves his brain and celebrates it for its different wiring and how he reacts to his environment and stuff. And it's just a really, really happy book. I think so often we look at neurodivergencies in media through this lens of like, it's traumatic or it's always a struggle. And I don't think that's the case. I think, every brain is beautiful, autistic, ADHD, neurotypical. And like, yeah, it's just been, it's been such a joy to write books that celebrate that.
Time for a third and final break of the podcast, but you can hear the joy in Mazey's voice when she talks about this. So I just loved listening to her talk about writing neurodiverse characters, writing diverse characters, and it was a joy to read as well. So let's go ahead and take our last break of the podcast. Stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I'll be right back.
Still on the search of that one true love? On the limbo in this crazy world of dating, marriage, relationships? Well, listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, your one-stop podcast for everything about relationships.
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast and the conclusion of my interview with author Mazey Eddings.
I actually just read, or I saw, it was a TikTok, and it's a children's book, but it's from the point of view of a neurodivergent kid, and I think he's maybe, 7 or 8 if I'm reading the book right. But he's talking about his NT friend, and he talks about how he doesn't do the things that the neurodivergent kid expects, and that's okay. And I loved that it was from that perspective.
I love that. Oh my gosh. Yes. You see, we need more of that. That is so beautiful.
I'll see if I can find the author for you, because I just love that. Because normally it's the neurodivergent kid. Oh, that's okay, but the MT kid was okay.
Yeah.
It's okay
Oh
that
my God. I love that. That is so wonderful. Yes, I think we definitely need more of that. And I think just like, any type of media from these different perspectives is just like, it's so empowering, and it just makes, I don't know, it just feels like a hug,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. In terms of writing, you started writing this book because you weren't sleeping, but is writing for publication something that you always wanted to do, or did you come to that later in life?
I really didn't think it was something that I didn't believe I could do. So it was like hard to entertain the dream of it, because it seemed like it was so far, beyond something I was capable of. And, a lot of times it still feels that way. Like I'm drafting a book right now, and I'm like, I don't feel like I can do this. Like, like how does somebody write a book? But no, I think, so writing is something that I've always done just for the joy of it. And it wasn't something that I shared a lot of. And I wrote a bunch of short stories, but I was never able to finish a full-length novel. And then A Brush with Love ended up being the first full-length novel that I finished. And I felt so excited about it. And, so I shared it with a friend or two, and they were extremely encouraging and supportive of me pursuing, publishing with it. And so I kind of was like, I have nothing to lose. I love this story. I believe in this story. So why not, and so I feel very lucky to have gotten to this opportunity. And I keep pinching myself, like it doesn't feel real.
Yeah, I bet. What, from your own experience then, would you have advice for other aspiring authors?
Yeah, I think, I think one piece of advice that circulates a lot is that you have to write every day to be a writer, or something along those lines, and I am a firm believer that writing is so much more than just when you are sitting down at your keyboard. I think it's really important to lean into the moments where you're not, putting words on a page, but instead you're observing the world around you, or, you're just sitting there daydreaming, or allowing your brain to play with ideas. It's not all about, producing words and stuff like that. And just really hold on to the joy of creating and daydreaming and, chasing an idea and stuff, because, if that's how you develop a story that you believe in and you love. And I think that's one of the most important things about the process. And then from just somewhat more of a craft or technical perspective, I think the best thing you can do to become a better writer is to read voraciously, so read everything that you can get your hands on, whether it's the specific genre or, niche that you're looking at, or if it's a totally different, subgenre, things like that. Reading the way that other people use words helps you to get a stronger grasp on how you want to use them. So yeah, that's my advice. But I also don't know what I'm doing. So I try not to give too much advice.
Here you are, so you must know something.
Yeah.
So you said read voraciously, and you've mentioned that you do love reading romances. Who are your go-to authors and genres when you read for yourself?
Oh my gosh, I could go on forever. Okay, so in the contemporary romance, rom-com genre, I would say, some of my favorites are Talia Hibbert. She's written the Brown Sisters trilogy. She has a lot of self-pubbed works too. I think, and she writes a lot of disabled characters, neurodivergent characters, queer characters. Her representation, I just feel so seen every time I read one of her books. And I think she is just one of the funniest voices out there. Another one is Chloe Lisa. She has, the pretty popular Bergman Brothers series, which I believe it's going to be 7 or 8 books following this family of siblings. And again, she just does, she's a fellow autistic author, and she does such a great job with just again, with representation, but also just her books are hysterical. Like, she has so many pranks and hijinks in them, and it's amazing to me that she can, dive so deeply into a family, and yet every book feels so fresh and amazing. I'm constantly blown away by her. Helen Wong too. Like, I would be remiss not to mention Helen Wong, because The Kiss Quotient was one of like the most, influential books I've ever read. And just like seeing myself on a page and stuff. And, the Kiss Quotient follows Stella, the heroine, who's an autistic woman, and reading her book, I remember finishing it, and I read that book at a time where I was starting to get into that lull where I didn't think I was going to finish writing A Brush with Love, and I just felt so moved by The Kiss Quotient. And inspired it was a huge inspiration to even finish my own story. And so in contemporary romance, they're, I think they're just some of the best out there. And then in other genres, I read a lot of historical romance too. So Tessa Dare is incredible, Lisa Kleypas, Beverly Jenkins, Nalini Singh. She has like a paranormal romance, and it's some of like the most creative and compelling and like evocative storytelling. I'm sorry, I could go on. I'm totally rambling, but the genre is just an embarrassment of riches with, some of the authors that we have right now.
Mm-hmm. No, that's ramble away. I love the passion. You're obviously talking about something that you love, so that's good. Slightly different topic. Website and social media presence. If you have a website, if you can tell people where to find it, and also any social media that you are active on.
Yes. So my website is mazeyeddings.com, MAZEYEDDINGS. And I try to keep it updated. I don't do as well as I should, but I do try to keep it updated. And I also have a newsletter, which I am better at, communicating through, and you can find that on my website. I'm most active on Instagram with the handle at Mazey.Eddings, and then on Twitter, and this is so embarrassing, my handle is Foxy Grandpa 27 on Twitter and TikTok. So if you want to find me there, that's that one.
Why?
Yeah, it's so dumb. I need to change it because this really is so silly.
You don't have to answer it if you don't want to.
No, I feel like I need to. There was a SpongeBob episode where I don't even remember like the main plot, but no, I remember SpongeBob had like this hat where you could put sodas on the sides, and it was like a straw hat, like he was drinking from it. And Mr. Krabs needed the hat for some reason, so we bought him a bunch of other different ones, and one of the hats said like Foxiest Grandpa or something. And I mean, I probably saw that when I was like 7 or 8, and it just stuck with me as just like top tier humor, which is so silly. But I just like immortalized that in my Twitter and TikTok handles.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Okay. And I interrupted you. So Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, anything else?
Yeah. Nope, okay. That's it.
Okay. Love it. Well, Mazey, we've talked about a lot of different things today, and it's been super fun. Is there anything that we haven't covered, though, that you wanted to mention in terms of writing or A Brush with Love or any of your other books?
I don't think so. I've loved your questions. I guess, A Brush with Love is available now wherever books are sold. And then, my sophomore novel comes out September 6th, 2022, and it's called Lizzie Blake's Best Mistake. I don't know. I'm so happy to have chatted with you. This was wonderful.
It was great. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
So, as you know, this is usually the part where I reiterate my thanks, and I will be doing that shortly. But I have to tell you, while I was working on this episode, had my headphones on, heard something over off to my right, and I thought one of the dogs had gone to their dog dish, and then I thought, no, the dogs are in the bedroom with my husband. And I looked over, and out of the corner of my eye, I just saw a little gray. Maybe it was a cat. I think there was a cat in my house. I don't own a cat. It was not Judy the cat, because it was not big enough to be Judy the cat from the book. But I think there was a cat in my house, but then I couldn't find it. I hope it was a cat and not like a rat. It didn't seem to move like a cat. It sauntered from what I saw of it. I don't know, ghost cat? Couldn't find it. Don't know where it is. Closed the window in my kitchen. Maybe it got in that way, or maybe there's still a cat somewhere in my kitchen and I just couldn't find it and it's hiding really well. I don't know. Haven't heard any crunchings from the food dish since then, but yeah, that's my story for the night. Mystery cat. I'll keep you posted if I learn anything else. But for now, thank you again to Mazey for joining me to talk about A Brush with Love and so many other different things. It was a lot of fun, and I very much enjoyed the book. As I said at the beginning, if you are a fan of romantic comedies, then you should definitely check this one out. It's got great characters. It's got a fairly unique setting. I mean, like I said, I hadn't read, I don't think I've read a book where the main character main character. I think secondary characters have been dentists, but I don't think I've read a book where the main character was a dentist. Certainly not the main female character being a dentist, so awesome there. And then also you get the mental health representation, you get quirky secondary characters, and the result is a very fun book that, like I said, made me laugh out loud outside a Portuguese hospital. So I don't know if that's a recommendation, but there you have it. So thank you to Mazey for joining me. Thank you, as always, to you, my listeners. I hope that you will join me next time when we will be having another kind of romance. It's a time travel romance, so a little bit different. I'll be speaking with author Rick Lenz about his novel Hello, Rest of My Life. So, as I said, time travel romance, character driven. So join me for that. If you have not done so already, and you're a fan of this podcast, I would be grateful if you could leave a review, written or starred. Also, like, follow, subscribe, do all those great things so that you get the podcasts when they come out. And if you aren't doing so already, follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And I love hearing from listeners. So let me know what you're reading, what you want to read, how big your TBR list is, all of those good things. Hit me up on social media. Hope that you had a great week, and I hope that you are about to have an even greater weekend. And as always, I hope that weekend involves plenty of time for you to get yourself lost in a good book. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Book Review Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.